While being more interested in the combo side of the community, I do enjoy consuming my fair share of DMC speedruns, with DMC 1 especially being entertaining to watch as it is pretty much a perfect length, with all sorts of interesting improvisations, resource management, and movement tricks. However, I never had any plans to partake in all this craziness myself, and was content just appreciating it from a distance. Likely with the intent to lure in such people as myself, however, the future king of DMC speedrunning, Waifu Runs, recently created an event called the DemonPrix, inviting people to dip their toes into the runs of the original trilogy, with entrants being put to the task of speeding through one random mission each week, providing intricate tutorials and downloadable save files, making for the most approachable experience possible. After a little bit of contemplation, I decided to give in and join, albeit I didn't really have the prize money in my sights or anything, since I knew I'd be going up against a variety of skillful players, known names in the community like Lucid Enigma, Estenia, Super Spider, and various others, a lot of which were absolute beasts. So back then, I thought I wouldn't take it too seriously. This video will recount the story of how it went. If you want to help a brother with the algorithm or something, let me know which mission of the event seemed the most interesting to you. As the first week's challenge, players were asked to take on DMC 1 Mission 4, the one where you fight the Shadow and have your first encounter with Nemo Anglerfish. While I believe there is the option to do things your own way, I generally stuck to the guide that was given and tried to replicate it as best as possible, since I doubt I could come up with any crazy time saves myself, and generally the way you do the missions are supposed to fit into a complete run of the game. So you couldn't just holy water every encounter, as those are precious resources to be used at specific points during the full run. Mission 4 begins with you buying a holy water and a purple orb. However, doing so already created some issues. The shop in DMC 1 is somewhat clunky to navigate, with you having to for whatever reason wait a second after you selected an item from the list before you're allowed to hit confirm. Do so any sooner and your input will not register, meaning I could mash X 4 times on the holy water, only to scroll down to the purple orb without ever having gotten it. This frustrating little design choice led to plentiful resets, which made me feel quite silly after the fact when I learned that the in-game timer, which the DemonPrix would be measuring runs with, did not actually count any of the menuing that was done. Once actually in the mission, the first task was pretty simple. Move towards the phantom cutscene trigger as quickly as possible. For that we were to employ the beloved stinger spam, back in its olden days where Dante still went da, da, instead of yeah. From the looks of it, the thing that mattered the most here was making sure your third stinger would get you into the cutscene, which got a lot more consistently doable when I found a good angle to stinger from the beginning of the mission and make Dante immediately touch the top of the staircase. Later, when watching other runners, I saw that they activated DT at this part, which you start the mission out full with after purchasing the purple orb. So I copied their work and did the same. I'm not entirely sure of its purpose, but from attempting the section several times both with and without it, I figure it has to do with DT speeding up the recovery on your attack, allowing you to turn and line up your following stinger a bit more quickly. And since certain cutscenes or walking through doors deactivates DT for you without penalty, after running from Phantom like the brave warrior that you are, you're able to enter the next room with 3 runes still comfortably remaining. Never actually knew that there were doors in this game you could go through just by holding circle, but guess that's one interesting tidbit I could keep from this event. Next up, the name of the game was Freeing the Shadow from the Lion statue, which actually held a valuable quirk, where not only were you able to cancel your stinger by interacting with the statue, but if lined up right, it would even register a phantom hit, meaning just another slash and stinger would instantly shatter the statue. Unfortunately, in my best attempt, I failed this trick. Fighting the Shadow afterwards could be done in a few ways, with me wanting to try out the new fancy million stab tech someone found, as not only did I hear it was faster, but it also looked extremely cool. Unfortunately, however, after attempting it many times, with hits frequently not registering for reasons I'm not entirely sure of, I gave this strat up and just went with the tried and true skewer kill I had seen waifu do so many times before, standing on an unsuspecting slab of rock in the arena, causing the shadow to try and impale Dante, before jumping on top and instantly sending it into self-destruct mode with 3 shotgun twitches. A tech I'm quite frankly terrible at. I think I wiggled the stick too rapidly. In later attempts where I did a shot, then moved the stick once back and forth and shot again, it seemed to come out a lot more reliably. Afterwards, I gave myself as a sacrificial offering, and the shadow, bursting with glee, went and opened the door for me. After passing through, one of the coolest looking parts of the DMC1 speedrun came up, where you launch a marionette to use its body as a jump pad and allow yourself to quickly wall hike up the staircase. While it's obviously cooler doing crazy combos with enemy step in later games, little tricks like this are also quite a treat. And there's something really cool about the way the camera follows Dante upwards. Then came a surprisingly precise jump, where you have to hit the wall just right to be able to instantly get up top to the death sentence. I found this to come a lot more reliably if you let go of the stick in between jumps, as sometimes the camera turn would for whatever reason seemingly store your input and make your wall hike come out in the wrong direction. I believe my movement was actually good enough here for me to have been able to do a short hop right down to the door, but I had attempted it many times before and just could not find the correct angle as it was very precise, so I just mashed jump forward, accidentally getting a wall hike, which probably cost me some time, and did the safe version of just helm breakering down on the marionette, ensuring I'm free to walk through the door. After interacting with the chest gooch bogag lady and skipping the Nilo cutscene, I dodged to the door and made my way into battle. I had already learned from other people's questions that apparently for the loop to properly work, you need to not only be fast, but also facing Nilo head on instead of getting him from an angle or in the back. So I DT ran up into his face and started slashing away, employing the resident DMC1 cheese tactic of resetting Dante's melee combo by giving the left stick a full 360 churn, with 1 2 3 4 slash cancel, 1 2 3 4 slash cancel, before opening the menu and one cycling Dear Brother with the holy water purchased in the beginning. After seeing the strat executed so many times before, it was pretty satisfying being the one pulling it off for once, with Nilo instantly falling to his knees, completely avoiding the phase changes, if you want to call it that, where he teleports to different parts of the arena, leaving me with a final time of 121. Not an amazing time by any means, but after the initial struggle with the first run I was confident enough to keep a recording of being 130 using the supposedly faster million stab strat, I felt pretty good about managing to wrestle down the seconds by quite a lot considering the short length of the mission. I even managed to beat Stenia by a second, which was pretty cool. Super Spider got himself a 118. Kind of funny seeing someone else with a similar name to mine so closely ahead. Actually, 5 years ago, back during the big DMC charity event, Mills even confused me with him for a second when he saw me in chat, asking if I was ready to hop on and take over as the host for the next few hours. Talking about short missions, Week 2's task would be DMC 2 Mission 13. If you were aghast at how I turned less than 2 minutes of gameplay into 2 pages of script, worry not, because with this there's a lot less to talk about.
Don't speak, just die.
Basically, you just roll up to Aureus, pop a large Devil Star, and then are supposed to kill him as fast as possible, while not taking any damage, so you receive an A rank, which waifu listed as a requirement for this run because of how it would play into the usual DMC2 speedrun economy, I presume. The 2 strats he proposed in his guide, however, seemed suboptimal to me, as essentially from all I've seen of 2, the best way to go about killing things as quickly as possible is spamming its version of Round Trip, where while flying around in Devil Trigger, you perform a short-ranged melee strike. And sure enough, I peeped other players who did so, crushing the best possible time the guide suggested, bringing it down from 12 to only 7 seconds. When I attempted this, however, I quickly found myself in a perpetual state of annoyance, as for reasons beyond my understanding, Aureus would just refuse to register the hits I dealt, going from one round trip shredding away a fifth of his health bar in one go, to the next 3 passing through his body without leaving a scratch. After attempting this for way too long, not being able to find any consistency to when Arius would take damage and when he wouldn't, I abandoned this strategy and just went for the 12-second one, performing the T combo D, cancelled into Stinger 3 times, before 1-2 high time, and then another slash into Stinger. Funnily enough, even though I believe this was not supposed to happen, my high time actually launched Arius, meaning that while I was far off the 7 seconds that others achieved, I could at least giggle over how I made him look like a fool falling on his ass while I swatted the life out of him.
What? Dude, he fucking juggled Arius. Did you see that? Hold this, old man.
Yet, when scrolling through the leaderboard to check how my peers did, I suddenly regretted the choice I made, finding the top time to have dragged my score into the absolute dirt, getting only 58 points. The list of 100s was numerous, including Super Spider. That piece of shit. You know, how dare he actually? First he takes up the spot of the spider guy of DMC, has Mills confuse me for him because I guess we all look the same, telling me to take over a stream with several hundred people watching, which was really awkward and uncomfortable, might I add, and now this fucking asshole has the gall to make me look like an amateur background character in Waifu Speedrun Event 2? I'm not letting it fly. This time I'm gonna be the better spider, reclaimer of my name. Now, week 3 was the first DMC3 mission, M16 to be exact. This part was what scared me the most about joining this challenge, as I'm not only just bad at 3 in general, but DMC3 is a highly technical and complex speedrun, requiring constant mastery of the most difficult iteration of Royal Guard in this series, not only with its insanely strict 3-frame perfect Royal Release window. There actually are 2 levels of Royal Release in 3, titled by the community as Silver and Gold, but also with how practically any action you take can be further optimized with the use of guard cancels and swift JCs. Luckily for me, this first mission at least would not require anything too crazy in that department, with 16 largely being about moving quickly through the level, skipping 2 mandatory combat encounters through the use of holy waters, and then fighting a bunch of chess pieces before doing the lady boss fight. The effort optimizing one's movement on those 2 fights would take proved tremendous though, along with this mission's somewhat longer runtime making me have to start genuinely memorizing the routes and strategies a lot more intently than how back in DMC1 I merely ascended one staircase. Right off the bat, I found myself annoyed with how not only did Stinger get cut uselessly short when performed even in just a vague proximity to a wall, meaning one had to find the perfect sweet spot to take the most direct route through the level while not letting Dante get near anything that could disturb his attack from traveling its full distance, but also with how after passing through doors or even just loading into the level, if you held any direction, Dante would not go where you told him to, but instead run straight ahead, with you only being able to avoid it by either starting to move with a slight curve or by not touching the stick until the new area had loaded. Both of those quirks across my many attempts leading to incredibly frustrating time losses and an ungodly amount of resets. Similarly to M4 and DMC1, the mission begins with you trying to reach a door using 3 stingers, only this time being sure to apply the guard cancel at the end. Whenever I wouldn't get caught on a wall, this would be quite doable, although I swear there once was a point where I sat in this starting room for 10 minutes resetting over and over because Dante just would not go where I wanted him to. Watching other people's runs, I quickly realized how important it would be using DT in this mission to speed up certain sections where you couldn't just go for those stingers, using it to run past enemies. Like getting through the corridor and lining up a stinger with the first of the 2 switches. Those switches get triggered the fastest by reaching it with a stinger, full combo A, and then alternatively spamming stinger and straight, just holding forward and spamming triangle while switching weapons. Getting to both the switches was needlessly painful, as trying to stinger the first one often had it registering the wall to cut the stinger short as described earlier, and then when moving to the second, Dante would regularly target the stupid ball behind him. Dive kicking the first ball quickly from the correct angle will shatter them, but this could get really awkward because the camera angle after they break is insanely trash. So I wanted to try Stinger before the cutscene, however, because it varies how long it takes for the balls to touch, going for the Stinger would occasionally push the second ball out the other's way. Luckily, I got it on my final attempt. After grabbing the moon shard, I Stingered to the newly spawning Fallen and farmed some DT back from him with a taunt while waiting for the second to spawn, before jumping to use a holy water without being locked into the animation and delete both of them in one fell swoop. If you reach the door fast enough afterwards, you can guard the hat before the seal breaks, it recharging a bit of DT for you to use and some guard meter, which you're gonna be needing in full by the time you get to the lady fight. I tried to preserve a bit of DT by halfway through running back around from the left path to the right, toggling DT off and doing the rest with Stinger. Then when entering the next corridor, you Stinger to the sloth to knock it over and shoot it with Ebony and Ivory to ground it faster, so that you're able to free ride it down the path and enter the door at the end. You have to be careful to hit the sloth from the right angle as it needs to get knocked against the wall. Otherwise it will fly down the corridor and make it significantly slower to free ride on. Reaching the door on this sloth is incredibly difficult, as you need to slide right first and then take a sharp left turn to even get anywhere near it, and usually I'd have to dive kick to the door after, although I know that riding right into the door is possible. In my final attempt, the free ride unfortunately went absolutely horribly, and probably lost me quite a couple seconds, making my final time even more impressive to me. In the next room, with 2 quick Stinger guard cancels, you can quickly get up to the Blood Goyle to shoot it point blank and turn it to stone, where you can break it with a combo A. This you again have to be careful with, as accidentally hitting the enemy with the second Stinger will make it split and significantly slow you down. My final run has another time loss here, as me usually dive kicking to the door at the end of the corridor gave me the muscle memory of starting out this room by hitting both the triggers to equip Rebellion and the shotgun. Yet, since I slowly rode into the door, I never switched to Beowulf, making me accidentally perform a straight. The Blood Goyle's little dodge actually saved me here, as otherwise it would have definitely got hit by the Stinger and split, causing for another reset. After the Blood Goyle is dealt with, the second wave spawns and another holy water ends the fight. Here again, you can farm a bit of DT by taunting before you rush to the door. There you once more do the strat to trigger the switch as quickly as possible, and then jump on top of the ball to break it. Optimally, you do weapon switch cancels here, alternating between the first hit of Rebellion and Beowulf. However, I could not get entirely confident with the timing, and messing it up would regularly end with Dante doing combo B, which has no way of hitting the ball at all. So after a time, I began doing 1-2 before switch cancelling, as while likely a bit slower, it came with less risk. Once done and the golden sun is picked up, the worst kind of chess pieces spawns in, with you needing to dispose of the rooks while also building up the royal guard meter you use on Lady later. Aside from the strat the guy taught of instantly taking out the knight and the rook with a charged straight and full DT explosion, you were kinda left to your own devices, having to hope for the rooks to move into a decent position and smacking them up as fast as you can, optimally with killer BJCs, which for whatever reason are insanely hard to land on them. I got the impression that guiding where the rooks go was somewhat possible through whether you turn the camera, but while I learned that pressing R3 actually lets you center the camera, doing so in combat while trying to take the rooks out with quick jump cancels and guarding whenever the lasers come your way didn't work particularly well. So I pretty much had to be content with the positioning they gave me. On my final attempt, they weren't in a great spot, but I hit the JCs and guards really damn clean, probably saving a ton of time compared to other runs, which may have otherwise actually went better. The rest of the mission leading up to Lady was largely trying to optimize Stinger movement with a bit of DT running, however making sure to preserve enough of it for the upcoming fight. The Gigapede arena could save quite a bit of time with reverse Stingers to Stinger jump at certain points, but the repercussions of messing up the reversal were too severe, so I ended up just going for the dive kick most of the time. The Lady boss fight had a lot of luck involved, with you optimally 2-cycling her unless she decides to run away. The strat provided was waiting for her to pull out the Kalina for the first time, running up and doing 7 Beowulf hits in DT, then backing off to let Lady re-establish distance and continuing to shoot at you. When she pulls out the Kalina again, you do the same, dealing 6 DT hits with Bayo before expending the guard meter you stored up across the mission. This is meant to skip a damage threshold, which has her hide up in the bookshelves, throwing grenades. Afterwards, if you continue to hit her, it's up in the air on whether you either just kill her outright or she escapes. She can dodge roll before running away again, after which you can potentially still kill her semi-quickly with a dive kick and a couple hits, but optimally you wish for her to stand there and try to grapple away, during which continuing to punch her can get her down to 0. However, if you don't manage to deal out the necessary damage in time, Lady's grapple escape will send her somewhere to the opposite end of the arena, dealing a massive hit to your final score. So it's like risk-reward in a sense, only that you have no say in what she does. Hence me saying there's quite a bit of luck involved. From watching good old Estenia practice runs on this mission...
Oh, I could have beaten him. I'm tied for first place though. I'm tied for first place. I'm a schizophrenic.
Figuring out a one-cycle strat using a well-timed royal release on Lady...
Nice! Wow, super clean 1 cycle.
I learned that you could fit in a few hits on her at the very start, and from doing some experimenting, I learned that doing a stinger in DT dealt just enough damage to make the 2-cycle more reliable, instead of needing to rush her straight just before she has the chance to dash away at the end. After getting quite lucky with my final attempt, all that was left to do was ascending the jump pads to the door, them disabling your movement, so you unfortunately weren't able to helm break her down to the later ones. However, wiggling the stick would limit how high you would go, so that way you could speed things up a tiny bit, as well as by finally hitting your head on the 3rd jump to reach the door quicker. My final time ended up being a 2:42, which while still a far ways removed from the absolutely ridiculous first few places, made me very proud, since I fought really hard to improve my record and got it a long ways down from where I started, with the 83 points granted proving a necessary step for if I ever wanted to catch up with my newly declared arch nemesis. Week 4 had us returning to the start, not only by going back to DMC 1, but running the very first mission of the series. Being M1 with no Alistair and no upgrades, the approach to movement would be a lot different here, not being able to rely on stinger spam. So starting out, you just jump your way across the path up to the castle, as I believe jumping is faster than running, at least when ascending up something like the staircase because you land quicker, and also when jumping into low ceilings, like this overhanging bridge you get the first blue orb fragment from. Actually, this first part did not matter though, as it was merely one of the game's 3 intermission sections that doesn't actually count towards in-game completion time. Once reaching the inside of the castle, we are instantly upon one of my most hated parts of the game, the horse jump. Back when I streamed DMC1 to some friends to record my footage, I spent roughly 15 minutes going for and failing it, until eventually giving up and just collecting the orbs scattered around the room like a pussy. Unfortunately, this method wouldn't really fly here, so I ended up having to brute force a lot of practice to how I could get it somewhat consistent. Each proper attempt still seemed to require 5+ resets to failed horse jumps beforehand though. By jumping against the butt of the horse and wall jumping onto the head, you could quickly get on the spear by walking to the very left and then doing a full jump directly to the right, landing perfectly so you could immediately jump up into the orbs and make your way towards the door. Every single one of these steps would mess up constantly though, and even on my best attempt, I somehow triggered the contextual climbing prompt onto the butt of the horse, which lost me a whole second at least. Afterwards I messed up heavily, because the camera change does some weird things to your stick position here. The fastest way of moving before you acquire stinger is supposedly side rolls, so I attempted to use them as often as I could, but I would frequently mess up the input, meaning to turn to the side, lock on and then jump forward, but moving the stick too quick and already jumping forward before locking on. Hence I ended up with these funky jumps. In DMC1, for whatever reason, the angle you enter doors slightly affects the angle at which you appear in the next room, with both of the first doors if you face them slightly with Dante's left, usually allowing you to save some time by rolling left, first to the next door and then into the spiral staircase. I messed up the ladder in this run though. Once you're up the stairs, you jump towards the bottom right of the screen, then let go of the stick during the camera flip, and input a wall jump at the same angle to land directly in front of the key. If you miss your first jump and go across the box, you'd be locked into a super annoying unskippable cutscene showing you to go up, meaning basically a guaranteed reset. After triggering the marionette cutscene, the fastest thing to do is jump right and Helmbreaker the one on the lower floor, then roll out of that back to the stairs. I mess up the roll, but managed to land the Helmbreaker at least, which proved surprisingly difficult, with it requiring a somewhat precise jump and to press attack at a very certain point to not attack the wrong guy or land on the box. With some more jumping and rolling to hopefully optimize movement, you make it to the weird button that activates the basement, which is most quickly activated by doing the short pause combo into high time immediately followed up by a Helmbreaker. The basement is very RNG heavy, with enemy spawns and health values being either quite low or monstrously high. Either way, what you do is swing your sword twice, then slash cancel again with a full 360 of the stick, as explained in week 1, and repeating that to shred through the crowd, then doing so again on the first door before shooting the rest as you walk back to the elevator. Upstairs, you try kill the enemies as quickly as possible and very importantly, attempt to avoid any hits. This mission again had an S rank requirement, which was only achievable by no damaging it, unless you grab an orb stash on top of the propeller of the plane, which I could however not get done smoothly, so I just went with the no damage route. Super Spider's run again this week, however, kinda blew my time out of the water though, a whole 15 seconds faster than my 247, undoing the majority of the progress I did to try breach our massive gap with week 3. If I had any hope of still winning with my deficit of more than 40 points, I could not let this happen again. Devil May Cry 2 Mission 3 reminded me why I fucking hate this game, with the dodge roll spam needing to have enough delays in between to let you turn, because both the side dodge is horribly slow. At any time you get too close to a wall and unintentionally initiate a wall run, you lose a ton of time as well, pretty much forcing a reset on this admittedly very short mission.
Quick addendum, it took me until after the DemonPrix to learn that you can avoid wall running by not inputting a direction as you roll. Probably wouldn't have made the biggest difference here since you constantly had to re-angle yourself, but it still would have likely made this less of a pain in the dick. Anyway, back to the video.
Most of it consists of you rolling your way towards the goatling in the back, while the road goes up in flames. After playing this for a while, I honestly couldn't tell whether it was beneficial to let yourself get hit by the flames or not. At first I thought it would help set up Majin, which is the goal of this mission. However, by the end, I feel like it more so provided a hindrance. So I attempted to somewhat avoid it. However, you can't really avoid just mindlessly spamming roll all the way, otherwise you'd lose a lot of time. Once you reach the goatling, things don't get any better. In fact, they turn into a straight up mess. You're supposed to stay by the door leading to the boss, so the hand seal thingy damages you and helps bring you down to Majin range, along with the other enemies around. However, it seems straight up impossible to find any kind of consistent setup, with your fate basically just being left to the RNG gods, which can monstrously fuck you over, leading to an insane amount of resets. This is only made even more infuriating by DMC2's horrific end lag on sword swings, making it so that even during attempts where I got lucky and reached the right health threshold, trying to take out the goatling after will oftentimes suddenly damn you to die, because the game forbids Dante to dodge until after he safely returned the sword on his back and leisurely tied a leather strap around the hill to make sure it doesn't fall. I got quite lucky on this attempt, with me not only getting red health, I died or ended up with just a tiny bit too much health more times than I could count, but my killing hit wall splatting the goatling, leading to a significantly faster death animation and the door opening very early. However, it was not all good. One important time save in this mission consists of rolling towards the boss door at red health and activating DT in the middle of the animation. The roll counting Dante as in an airborne state and therefore allowing you to trigger Majin super low to the ground, instead of being locked into the massive leap he usually does to start it up. And doing so into the cutscene of the boss door opening would allow you to not necessarily skip the animation, but have it play out during a period where you're not able to do much anyway. making you able to attack the instant you enter the Orangutera arena. However, despite me literally mashing the hell out of the circle button to perform the roll necessary to initiate this tech, as I have on several other attempts before, the game just refused to read my inputs. Apparently, after the Goatling dies, there's a period before the cutscene plays, where Dante just becomes inactionable, leading to this unfortunate time loss. So I enter the boss arena as human Dante, and in there, activate Majin out of the roll so I can immediately fire its laser, taking out Big Monkey in one go. I actually struggled with this quite a bit at first, it barely doing half of Orangutera's health bar, until I whined on the Discord for a bit and the undisputed champion of this event, Chris, granted me the wisdom that after a certain DT threshold, the laser will for whatever reason actually start dealing only 50 damage a hit instead of 100. So that explained my issue. Even if I used no other attacks with Majin prior, I had to be quick and input the special pretty much ASAP. But afterwards, I got my instant kill. And from then on there was nothing left to do besides roll to the exit. This first roll I found quite difficult, until I saw from watching Chris's entry that you land directly on the key by simply inputting no direction at all and doing a neutral roll. This was another one of these runs where I can see the vision for a couple of things that could have made it quicker, namely figuring out how to consistently kill the Goatling with that wall splat, but honestly it was such a mess I couldn't be bothered, making my final time 44 seconds. And I'm very scared of what messed up Majin setups the next DMC2 missions may hold. Chiming in from the future, this was fortunately the only Majin setup we were made to perform throughout this event. Something which I'm definitely not upset about. Surprisingly, week 6 broke the pattern I figured this event would follow, because after 1-2-3-1-2, instead of the expected second go at 3, we were made to run more DMC2. Fuck! Despite my concerns raised by last week's violent struggle, Mission 12 appeared to still be relatively straightforward, with no need to set up Majin this time, but solely involving quickly destroying the purple cubes floating around gaming's most random encounter, and then taking down Plutonian using a specific sequence of attacks with the help of one small Devil Star. From the previous times I played through 2, I already knew that the cube section was really not that bad, simply involving a lot of jumping onto Helmbreaker, and then you'd be done with it, which is also what the guide waifu provided ended up showing. Double jump, Helmbreaker, skip one, double jump, Helmbreaker. By skipping one each time, you basically ensure that on the second cycle, there will never be a gap big enough for you to lose time, since you can always instantly double jump and be in range to deal another hit. I tried the strategy a few times to mild success, but what I had my eyes on was again a strategy I saw from Chris's run, where you would cancel the Helmbreaker animation right as it connected with the cube to pause his descent and be able to get right to the next one with round trip. It also involved some stuff with the lock-on air kicks, but that seemed insanely jank and difficult, so I didn't even bother. Nevertheless, I thought this round trip strat looked both really cool and would also be just what I needed to top Super Spider's time, who was sitting at 43 seconds, significantly better than my pure Helmbreaker attempts. So I got to work, and sorry if this gets a little drawn out, but this mission drove me fucking insane. At the start of the mission, you just do 2 quick rolls forward into the pit. The way you just barely make it to the edge with the second roll and Dante almost trips off gave me the impression I might save a slight bit of time by taking a step or two first, so that the second roll would have Dante falling in the middle of the animation, but I honestly couldn't tell you if there was any difference. Probably negligible at best, so even if I lost myself 0.3 seconds through this attempted optimization, it's fine. After skipping the following cutscene basically around the time lightning starts flashing, I continue to mash start to instantly open the menu and consume my small Devil Star. Now welcome to hell. Things already started out bright. When the moment you're allowed to begin moving, attempting to roll in a direction will have Dante jankily glitching in place, because something with the collision of this circular arena is whack. Same as after Orangutera, a neutral dodge seemed to work reliably, but that took me a couple attempts to figure out. Once the slashing commences, DMC2's horrendous autolog again proved that it guaranteed has to be the topic of a future rant video from me someday. Oh hey, I actually already went and made said video at this point. Go check it out here. Because the auto lock in this section is both constantly fucking you up by targeting the skull cycling the ball, which you waste nothing but time directing your attention towards, and yet it is also essential for Dante to even be capable of hitting the cubes, since if you jump and hold down the lock off button, you're completely stuck attacking in the exact direction you're facing towards after the jump. No tilting the stick left to direct your Helmbreaker towards the cube that just passed you. Needless to say, this just doesn't work with moving targets. So lock off did not help, putting your success at the whim of whether a skull was somewhat close by you, or sometimes honestly even with one far away. Dante would for some stupid reason prioritize it over the cube right next to him. This did not merely apply to Helmbreaker, but just as well to the round trip, which would sometimes target a skull halfway across the arena, causing unreasonable levels of frustration. Not like activating DT the exact moment your Helmbreaker splits the cube wasn't already hard enough, since doing it too early would obviously lead to no result, and doing it too late would leave Dante too low to hit the cubes that follow. So this was a very difficult timing task, even without all the other annoyances getting in the way. Talking about timing, I should probably address this now. An important part of this route was that you needed to still come out of the ballroom with enough DT remaining that you could kill plutonium using the sequence of 2 million stabs before spamming round trip. For the million stab specifically, you have to mash as hard as you can and deactivate DT right after the first hit comes out to preserve your meter while still getting the full damage of the DT version of the attack. Just as importantly to how I was doing it, the duration that you stay within round trip affects how much DT it actually drains, with you losing a lot if it plays out in full. But the attack also hits super unreliably, so you had to basically wait to see the attack break the cube and then deactivate DT as soon as possible to cancel the attack. Several times I got here after successfully performing the route, but only had the meter for 2 or 3 round trips at the end, which would result in Dante dropping out of DT and me desperately swinging to try get the kill, only to be smacked halfway across the arena and lose at least an additional 8 seconds. This waste of time can not only occur this way though, but also by you simply getting unlucky with him attacking right as you are forced to disable DT during million stab, or simply deciding to block all incoming damage for several seconds. It's just like Ari's all over again. Either of these were all basically instant forced resets, which could be quite frustrating after how difficult getting a good attempt at the beginning section was. I kept trying and trying, over time and watching more of other people's attempts, slowly realizing that this method was really not that much faster than the normal Helmbreaker route. But after spending so long trying to get this damn round trip working and still not having caught up to Super Spider, I was dedicated to sticking through it, and getting at least one attempt that fully showcased what I wanted, even if it still wasn't gonna be an amazing time. So at last, I ended up with this. My perfect route for the ballroom having me first Helmbreaker 2 of the cubes right next to each other, in a way which would often lure one of the Sargassos down to try bite Dante, making it so that it would be less likely for Dante to auto-lock it when I jumped towards the bigger gap between the heads, skipping one of the cubes, and then finally performing the loop. One Helmbreaker, cancelled by DT activation. Round trip on the second cube, deactivating it to preserve DT, then spamming ENI to ascend up in the air, waiting just long enough for the DT cooldown to wear off, before doing another Helmbreaker on the third, repeating the DT cancel so I can round trip the fourth, and exiting out of it to immediately Helmbreaker the fifth. And then the cube I skipped earlier was perfectly cycled back for me to be able to double jump up to it and take it out with another Helmbreaker.
Ooh. Ooh, Destiny Spider. Let's go. After the start of that room, I didn't think I was going to see that from you, but that was sick. That was tight.
Dropping down the hole, I roll my way through the corridor, trying to avoid any stupid wall runs, and then it's time to try kill Plutonian. I get off both my million stabs without interruption, and then cancel a high time into air raid. Didn't manage to get it quite as low as during some other attempts, but it is more important to get it than having it optimal. Activating DT too soon here would be fatal. Then, despite me trying my hardest with my DT management,
I only get 4 round trips out, Dante dropping to the ground and me swinging desperately as an attack comes my way.
Oh, thankfully you didn't get away, that would have been bad.
I managed to kill Plutonium in possibly the final frame before his wrecking ball would have sent me away, and then make my way to the exit. Taking an unfortunate time loss, however, because for some reason after the cutscene you're still locked into your attack animation, which is not an issue if you finish it with round trip, since you can just press L1 and get rolling, but in my case I had to wait out a long uncancelable sword swing, which costed me at least 1 if not 2 additional seconds. At the end, I came out of it with a 042, beating Super Spider by just a second, but I was satisfied. That air kick I mentioned earlier as being janky and annoying, by the way, ended up getting Chris an absolutely insane 029, destroying all the rest of the competition. No clue how he even controls that sort of thing. Week 7 had us once again returning to DMC 1, this time as opposed to M1 however, which left us bare without any movement abilities. Mission 9 was late enough in the game for not only DT Run and Stinger to return, but also Vortex to be added on top. Vortex is the fastest form of movement available in the game, and there is actually a way to using it without auto-targeting to a nearby enemy by holding R2 to override it, similarly to DMC2. However, timing it can be weirdly strict, since the R2 needs to be held before Vortex is initiated, otherwise it will continue to go to a target. But also you can't be pressing it too early, since if you input it before your jump, you end up taunting instead, which obviously loses time in sections where you intend to just fly past enemies. Might be notable to mention, by the way, but this week also had a style requirement. It was no big deal to get though, as all you were required to do for the S was no damage, the only obstacle of which appeared to be Griffin and the odd fetish fire breath from off-screen. It really didn't cause as many resets as it might have in M1 for example. The mission starts out with you just performing a lot of stingers across the drawbridge to the staircase, making sure to avoid the square on the ground that you later insert the Wheel of Destiny into, since you're not allowed to walk over it and it would just stop you dead in your tracks. After the 7th stinger, you turn on DT and run to the little fence, hopping over it to get a jump start on the stairs. To actually run the correct direction afterwards, you have to let go of the stick and start holding left after the camera switch. Then I would find myself often running down the stairs but failing to actually make it to the door without my DT meter dropping below 3 runes. After paying good attention to some other participants' entries, I was able to alleviate this though, running a tighter circle around the pillar in the middle, counting the torches on the wall, 1, 2, 3, 4, before running further out, holding the interact button to pass through the door as early as I could. After stingering into the next cutscene, the first vortex occurs, with you having to jump and initiate it in a relatively specific angle down and slightly left towards the screen, continuing to just hold it all the way into the area where you acquire the Ifrit gauntlets. If messed up, it was still possible to correct the angle a bit by letting go of triangle and holding it again right after Dante falls while directing the left stick in another position. Probably no bigger than 45 degrees in either side. But fortunately, on this attempt I got it perfect. When inside the Ifrit place, you continue to do some movement, using a roll to try make it so you can just barely hit the switch from max range with your stinger while gliding along the wall, before slashing and immediately stingering again. After you acquire stinger, this instantly replaces Mission 1's method as the fastest way of activating those buttons. Then you wait for the platform to the left to descend, so you can simply jump atop it and instantly get to Ifrit. If you're one of the people who hates this platforming section, I guess this might help you in the future. The next part was weirdly hard. You're supposed to either jump towards the screen or walk to the edge and trigger one of Dante's weird climb-off animations, and then time a dive kick just right so you instantly pass through the gate. Do it too late and you'll waste time. Do it too early and you will basically fuck your run, since Dante will land on the place you jumped onto the platform from, which is gonna suck for getting to the door, especially since this game doesn't let you manually alter the direction of your dive kick after you jump in the air. Luckily on this attempt, I got it timed absolutely perfect, to the point you don't even see the other camera angle before Dante leaves back to the courtyard. There you skip the Griffin cutscene and make your way towards the gate you unlock by lighting the flame,
using jumps and rolls while farming some DT off the big bird to have it for the next room. Dive kicking also allows you to override auto-lock in the air, the way R2 during Vortex does, so a good way to light the torch is doing that. I unfortunately mess up, but luckily jumping out of the punch after goes so quick, I doubt it lost me much time. I'm slightly curious though whether there would have been a big save here by aiming a wall jump to dive kick to the gate way earlier. I haven't given this a try yet, but maybe when I'm going over the script again. After entering the little forest area, one of my favorite looking locations in DMC1, you use the R3 quick switch to change back from Ifrit to Alistar, and then use the DT bolt from Griffin to quickly try Vortex your way to the door past the trees. Since the grenade launcher can't shoot in the air the way ENI and other guns do, you're able to hold circle the moment you exit DT to interact with the door as soon as Dante falls to the ground. Afterwards, the forest fight is initiated. For this, I want to abbreviate the grenade gun to GL, as that's what people commonly refer to it as in speedrunning circles, and it will be used a lot in this encounter. I guess it should be GG instead, but that sounds dumb, so shortening grenade launcher makes more sense. This part felt amongst the more random and difficult to learn in the entire DemonPrix so far, with Waifu giving players the heads up of starting with a GL shot into Stinger, then DT running to the left and taking out both marionettes there with one shot, roll cancelling to shorten its recovery and then using DT GL and a Stinger to instantly kill the fetish at the very edge of the arena. Afterwards the fight will become quite RNG and you're left up to your own devices. While my final performance here wasn't great, I could actively feel myself getting better over my various attempts, so maybe had I taken more time, I would have managed to cut it down a decent bit more. Most marionettes die in one GL shot, with fetishes, as previously stated, going down in one DT GL and one Stinger, or simply another non-DT GL. So this fight has you maneuvering the arena, trying to be aware when and where the enemies spawn so you can take them out as fast as possible using roll cancel GL shots, managing your DT meter to avoid running out for when you need to kill a fetish, or for when the fight ends to ensure fast movement to the end of the mission. One technique that can help with this is a so-called DT flash, which is just a fancy way of saying that you turn off your DT after shooting GL before the projectile hits the target, to cause it to refill a stupid amount of your meter. It's not too hard, and I used this quite well in my submitted attempt, but I definitely was a bit too conservative with my Devil Trigger usage, and might have gotten a better time if I used it for longer periods before flashing for the refill. After the forest fight concludes, you just stinger through the following little corridor before running to the door at a slight angle to the left and initiating the final vortex. Be sure to override lock-on again for this, as there are enemies off-screen which Dante will decide to prioritize instead. But then, after arriving at the door, you just let go of triangle to fall and interact with the door so you can run through and end the mission, achieving a 203 in my case, winning by just 4 seconds and again only gaining me a very negligible 3 points on this damn thief. Is it unhealthy and borderline creepy to obsess over a complete stranger over a basic similarity in names like this? I can tell you. But what I do know is that I'm coming for this stupid cunt next. Week 8 I could feel would be an important one, as Super Spider with his 586 points was still way ahead of my 552, and the event was slowly but surely coming to an end. I knew there was no chance for me to catch up anymore if I didn't make significant point leaps for each of the 3 missions we had left. So when I saw that he had gotten 70 points, I tasted blood. Like that song, you know? DMC3 Mission 10, despite Waifu describing it as rather simple, turned out to be yet again an arduous movement test, with all sorts of mistakes that can happen at any point, along with you, similar to Mission 16, needing to build up your Royal Guard meter for a release at the end. Only this time, as opposed to how it was on Lady, it needed to actually be a 3-frame Royal release, which hits 2 targets simultaneously. Hard as it was, however, I knew I had to give it my best shot, because I knew there would likely never come a chance as good as this to raise my score again. The mission starts out with you having to grab the stone mask on an annoying pathway that was easy to get stuck on. I experimented here for a little while, finding the perfect position to stinger from,
before paying attention to my DT meter and realizing that, unless attacking in DT consumes the meter quicker, it seemed to be no faster than DT running to grab it that way. So I'd DT run to the mask, back to the door, and afterwards use the annoying way you're locked into a direction after an area transition the way I complained about on week 3 to get a good stinger during a somewhat inconvenient camera angle, before inputting the following two to the door more comfortably. As per usual, of course, every stinger had to be guard cancelled to avoid slowing you down and letting you immediately use it again. Passing through the door, you DT run right to the spawning gluttony and knock it over with a stinger. Guard cancel, E&I shot, and jump forward to initiate a free ride the same way as back in week 3. However, this time there was a much longer path ahead, with you needing to chain 3 of them back to back on the same enemy to perfectly make it back through the waterfall. Anytime free ride came to an end, you had to spam shots to stop Dante from jumping back too far from the enemy, and I think also to stop the enemy from being sent flying. But to me it felt like, no matter what, they would always land slamming into walls after, so the bullets didn't stop them. Meaning you had to basically get a good angle to send them into a wall where you could make it right back on top. Considering certain camera angles, this wasn't always easy. Out of the cave, it's back to basic stinger movement, with you having to insert the stone mask into the thingy to raise the bridge across the water, and then making your way down and back across it till you reach the fight with the Dullahins. This was the spot where you could build your guard for the battle at the end, the god-awful spinny blades in the walls allowing you to farm plenty of RG by jumping into and blocking them. As easy as it may sound on paper, and should probably have been, I never really got the hang of it. In his guide of the mission, Waifu mentioned how the fastest way to dispose of the Dullahins would be using the cancel E&I have on certain air actions to chain aerial cross into itself as opposed to jumping and landing on the ground before doing it again. As I saw no one else do this, I was mistaken. The player Dongios landed it on the last of the 3. I thought it would both be a good way to cut down some time, which I desperately needed after my initial attempts barely getting below 3 minutes, and because I thought it would be a cool way to show off a little. So I practiced for a little while, and it's honestly not too bad. The timing is just a lot later than a JC would be, while still having to be early enough that Dante doesn't straight plop to the ground. Luckily, on my best attempt, I managed to flawlessly land the cancel on all 3 enemies, guarding the wall blades in between kills to build my RG meter. Causing hype once again as Waifu watched back through the week's entries and let the winners know that even they, with their insane times, could have still shaved off another 2 seconds by following my stunning example.
What a fucking G.
Before I promptly walk into one of the wall blades after the cutscene is skipped and fall on my stupid ass, losing 2 seconds in the process. I had not built the full 2 stocks of RG, but after such a significant time loss, I didn't want to risk getting anywhere near the blades again. So I just made my way to the door, hoping what I stored would be good enough. The beginning of the next room can mess you up badly in several ways, either by locking on to the wrong enemy, or just through a stupid camera angle. So knowing that from my previous attempts, I kept the stick neutral until I was sure the new area lock was gone, and made my way up the path, before locking on to the correct enigma and continuing my stinger spam till I was up close. Afterwards, there's a couple things you can do, but the safest was just DT running up the stairs. I did get significantly better at bufferless reverse stingers since week 3, but after still only managing to land it 40% of the time, I didn't want to take any risks. And it was good that I didn't, because with how little DT I had from not landing all the guards right, I just barely made it to the lowering staircase before it ran out. This staircase, for some reason, can actually trigger a stinger jump at certain angles, but only when you're in DT. I get it, before making sure to walk slightly back to the right, to not miss the second, as would often happen, and then continue towards the last enigma. Again, I would often go for reverse stingers here, and usually it worked, but I didn't want to risk things, so I decided to quickly kill it and keep stingering safely. Unfortunately, I didn't really remember the route the guide showed, so I did a full combo A into high time before killing it with aerial cross, when replacing combo A just with another stinger would have been enough. Don't know how much time it lost me, but definitely some.
After making it to the final encounter, where you optimally stinger into this little corner to trigger the cutscene early, I finally got lucky and managed to line both the annoying spiders up right before landing a jumping perfect air release, instantly killing the small one and getting the big one close enough on the verge of death that a few more hits took her out. The spider on spider violence this week was heartbreaking to see, but it had to be done. If I wasn't gonna let Super Spider stop me from becoming the greatest spider named character in this community, I was certainly not gonna let these annoying trash mobs keep me from my goal. Afterwards, while I know it can be done sooner, I wait until I'm sure I see the third and final spider of Wave 2 spawn in, and use a holy water to wipe them out. Then make my way to the door, heart racing, knowing I would definitely beat my previous time of 2:04, just not by how much. Only for the door hand, which had already robbed precious seconds of some of my previous runs, to catch me super off guard, and jump scare me to the point I accidentally paused, while another part of my brain landed on roll guard, making me press jump and sending me even deeper into the menu. I exit, mashing circle, and fortunately get out of the menu, still landing my block, and not being flung on my ass for -2 seconds yet another time in this mission. The rest just consists of more stinger movement. My acquired DT from the fight luckily allowing me to run a tiny bit faster than on previous attempts, skipping a double cutscene and trying to maintain nice clean lines to not lose any time by bumping into walls. Then after entering the final room and taking 1 or 2 steps forward, a stinger will instantly enter the mission end cutscene. One of my favorite scenes in the game, but skipping that shit to land on a rather satisfying 195. I would have preferred had I managed to get my time even lower, since there is still quite a massive gap to make up, but the 82 points would surely still prove incredibly valuable. As the second to last week, I was not really sure what to expect, but was surprised to find that we'd have to take on DMC 3 Mission 20, the final Virgil fight. Due to it yet again being an incredibly short mission, only second to week 2's Arius boss fight I believe, every single second here would count. But it would also mean that this was my best chance I'd probably get to cross the rest of the gap. Potentially my last, considering I wouldn't know what next week's task would be. Virgil 3 would prove himself an incredibly demanding test of skill. But what added to it was the fact that he would also be very RNG heavy. There were ways to still do great at this fight if he used Rapid Slash, but when shooting for the best times, it was almost certainly a reset point, since he only really seemed to become punishable after either of the 2 combo strings he does. Also Judgment Cut. But with how Judgment Cut usually follows Virgil first teleporting halfway across the arena, this would obviously not fly. The goal in this fight, provided by the guide, was similar to the face skip on Lady back in week 3, where your stored up Royal Guard meter would be used to try get Virgil all the way from before 40% health to death, since otherwise he'd coat himself in a shield and initiate one of 2 extremely long Devil Trigger super moves, which you certainly wouldn't be able to kill him during. The mission starts with a quick stinger to close distance and get yourself into Virgil's attack range. This proved troublesome, since you had to stinger almost instantly, otherwise it was possible it would trigger a response from Virgil, oftentimes making him teleport away. But from the save file provided, Dante still started the mission with Beowulf equipped from the Arkham fight. To make this more comfortable, I simply replayed M1 on easy mode, making sure the equipment I finished with would be Rebellion and the shotgun. The guide had the player guard cancelling the initial stinger and then run up towards Virgil, waiting to block his attack string. But the speed of the first 2 hits of Virgil's combo was genuinely insane. It might be a bad reaction time or an input lag thing, but oftentimes that I found myself pressing guard the instant I saw Virgil's body even twitch, it was already too late and I got hit. Hence you were almost forced to just mash guard preemptively while approaching him, which did however make it take longer for you to reach him. To try and alleviate this, instead of running, I jumped forward after my stinger, so that even despite mashing guard like a crazy person, I would still seamlessly continue my approach. Once he started attacking with his string like you want him to, there were 2 options. Either a 4-hit combo on the ground, or a 5-hit combo where he launches you up in the air before slamming down with a Helmbreaker and following up with a stinger. For simplification's sake, I'll be referring to them as Combo A and Combo B from now on.
Both of these were hard to block in their own right, with especially the latter requiring a surprisingly early guard on the Helmbreaker and a scarily late one on the Stinger. A saving grace, however, was that, despite the speed of the first two hits being kinda bullshit, the third hit of both strings, while having a different animation and effect, seemed to have identical timing, meaning after guarding that one, you were given a fair chance to adjust to what follow-up would come. For anyone not in the know, before DMC5 made the change to Royal Guard with botched guards draining DT, the chip damage that people talk about was not actually the big issue. The thing that made it so difficult to get into is that a lot of attacks in 3 and 4 would completely shatter your guard if not timed perfectly. So the big "you done fucked up" animation that plays only ever when you hold block with a completely empty meter in 5, here may very well happen every other second. With holding block on both strings for testing, allowing you to see that in Virgil's combo A, a failed guard on the third hit will true combo into the fourth, and on combo B, while you're able to recover after the launcher, if you fail the guard on the Helmbreaker, it will true combo into the Stinger. The guard break also occurs on everything else, like Rapid Slash, Judgment Cut, and Round Trip I think. So aside from on the first two swings of his strings, you really can't allow yourself to be sloppy. Otherwise you will both lose a lot of time from Dante getting smacked around, and missing valuable guard meter, which you need for the phase skip. After successfully guarding Virgil, you are to attack him with a barrage of dive kick JCs. Also, since the beginning of this mission, you are holding L1 to charge up DT Explosion. The guide talked about letting a full one loose, but since my route had slightly adjusted to make use of Royal Guard level 3, which we were given access to, I planned to manage my DT a little differently, requiring me to regain a full meter sooner. The way I eventually settled on was performing 5 or 6 dive kick JCs, then already letting go of my DT Explosion early, and continuing to dive kick until I reached 10 or 11 hits, before disabling my DT. That way, I would usually retain enough meter for the first orb to already be charging, and after making Virgil flinch back with a singular shotgun guard cancel, I would be safe to fit in a taunt, and regain more of my meter before he'd continue his assault. Unfortunately, due to my best attempt having me badly messing up my jump cancels, I probably lost just as much meter as I would have from a full DT Explosion, while dealing less damage, rendering my attempted resource management strat null. The shotgun guard cancels, however, did go really well on this attempt, allowing me to squeeze in a little bit of damage before managing to guard the full combo B, landing it on the first 2 hits, probably making up for the taunt I decided against. The guide showed the strat of you giving Virgil 3 attack cycles, taking him out after the third with a combination of a full DT Explosion, dive kicks, and then expending the release. But with the level 3 we were granted, there was the option to kill him quicker by storing up more guard. However, to get all 3 of the orbs glowing in full, it was basically required for Virgil to use his combo B twice in a row, since it built a lot more than combo A, leading to again a lot of RNG dependent resets. After guarding the second combo B, I continued to do dive kick JCs until I was sure Virgil would be low enough on health for me to take him out in one failed swoop, careful however to not hit the 40% threshold. Then I waited for him to initiate his next string, as acting any sooner would allow him to escape, and let go of my now fully stored up DT Explosion, shortly before timing a perfect royal release to the third hit, as it was the most reliable one to time, blasting through the rest of Virgil's health in a flash, and landing me at a 0.22. My dive kick JCs definitely faltered, and after watching other people's entries, I feel like I could have probably stopped to kill Virgil with my perfect release a lot sooner, but I tried for long and hard, and with the heavy RNG and high difficulty involved, this was the best I could get. I've watched that damn sword fall from the sky so many times it was actually driving me insane. What is even more insane though was that after all this time, I had finally done it. With my performance in this mission, I at last overtook Super Spider on the leaderboard, sitting at 698 points, 5 over his 693, proving myself the better Spider, unless the final week would end up throwing a wrench in my plans.
Week 10 would at last have us wrapping up the event with DMC 1 Mission 11, taking on Nilo 2. However, as you may remember from Week 1, the actual fights against Nilo are basically skipped entirely by just using Holy Waters. So unlike our previous task of optimizing the boss encounter on Virgil, it would be back to mostly just optimizing movement using Vortex. At first, you jump down the well. You can reach it super early, but funnily enough, you do have to take like a singular step forward from the start of the mission to be able to drop in one swift hop. Otherwise you'll hit the ledge and lose some time. Inside the well, the area with all the assaults, or blades I guess, or second worst buster animation in DMC, you already begin falling from up in the air. So by holding R2 and waiting just a second for Dante to pass the rim, you can activate DT and initiate a vortex towards the screen, making your way towards the breakable wall. To hit it, you have to perform one of those vortex turns I mentioned in week 7, where you let go of attack to drop a bit, and then within a limited angle, turn towards the right to make Dante drill directly through it. Behind it stand 2 more blades, which you can enemy step off of to make it up the platform, since usually after Vortex you're not allowed to do stuff like wall hike anymore. Then you just DT run past the final blade and hug the wall to try reach the exit with a quick wall jump. Inside of the next area, Dante unfortunately starts out kinda weirdly turned again, so before being able to stinger to the Sign of Chastity, you have to re-angle him. After picking it up, you stinger back to the hole. Most people stingered and then jumped into a Helmbreaker here, but something about the recovery of Stinger made it feel sorta clunky to me. So instead I went for a Stinger jump, which felt like it had him drop down the hole quite a bit faster. Whatever time that may have saved though, was probably undone by the 2 extra steps I had to take to be in range enough of the ledge for the Stinger jump to be triggered. Back down the hole, we had to restore DT to be able to continue to Vortex, by doing a few GL cancels before jumping out the third, DT running out into the main tunnel and jumping into a vortex to the well entrance. For some reason, just holding the stick down here would most times be sufficient towards getting a clean line through the tunnel, which was definitely appreciated since hitting the different angle might have been complicated. But you could basically keep holding the same direction as during your DT run and it'd be fine. Next up was one of the most important parts of the mission, with you being able to save a significant amount of time by just how tightly you could wrap your vortex around the tree in the center to reach the door to the boss arena. Trying to improve on this after my initial attempts cut down my time by quite a few seconds. To reach the chalice, people would do 2 stingers, but since the second stinger was difficult to line up and didn't travel max distance anyway, I instead just followed my stinger up with a jump, which was good enough to reach and interact with it quickly. The most unremarkable part of the mission was yet again Nilo, with a quick 1-2 high time into 2 holy waters taking him out. But the hardest part for sure was the needlessly precise jump that followed, wall hiking up the pillar. Since there was no requirement to save up DT for the start of the next mission like on a full run, Chris found a strat with Vortex to reach the place where you put down the chalice quickly, and most people followed along. The way I found most consistent was taking a few steps to the left first, till Dante stood on the edge of the little puddle, with the camera turning a slight angle, and then jumping down towards the screen. It wouldn't work every time, but felt like a much easier way of lining up the wall hike on the pillar than manually inputting the direction with your stick. And once up top, activating DT and holding triangle for Vortex. You need to wait a bit until Dante had reached sufficient height, otherwise your Vortex would be too low for Dante to simply glide into the chamber, getting stuck on the staircase and inevitably falling into a reset, since as I said, wall hikes after Vortex are unfortunately not allowed. But on my submitted attempt, I of course get it pretty perfectly, before flying back out the chamber and running my way to the door, ending the mission on a 110. The acquired 91 points bringing me up to a final result of 789, cementing my glorious victory over Super Spider. Fating I had come to take what was rightfully mine, and at long last, I was truly the reclaimer of my name. But in all seriousness though, while I thought it would be like a funny idea to set myself that motivating factor of a one-sided rivalry in order to maintain my drive and give these runs a fierce and honest shot, This was of course all just one big dumb joke. From me stalking his submissions, I'm pretty sure most of Super Spider's runs were done within just a few tries. Meanwhile, I had to sweat my little ass off for several hours each to try beat his times. And as I mentioned at the start, the guy even was part of the big DMC charity events a couple years back, helping raise more than $10,000 and doing a lot of good for the world. I still won though, so I'm the better person. I had a lot of fun participating in this event, and I'd encourage anyone who watches this video to consider joining in next time Waifu throws one. While this was definitely quite different from how I usually enjoy playing these games, and I doubt that I'll stick with it, since Lord knows I still got truckloads to learn when it comes to the combo and freestyle side of things, which I definitely want to prioritize, it was still a really interesting change of pace that gave me a fresh insight onto these games that mean a lot to me. The Google Doc sheet will be linked in both the description and pinned comment, if anyone's curious to check through it for whatever reason. Holds everyone's results and some incredibly useful resources, like all of Waifu's tutorials. But yeah, that finally brings my story of the DemonPrix to an end. I've had the script done for months, and even gave the voiceover a couple goes beforehand, but it was just so long and intimidating, and had other topics distracting me, resulting in it continuously getting pushed back. Now that it's done, I hope it managed to still be somewhat entertaining, even when occasionally falling into the YouTube video genre of just recite exactly what happens in the game, which I had sworn to destroy, not join. Also, I recently found out that Super Spider apparently was the first of the participants to break the world record in Week 2's 12-second Arias fight, managing to get it in only 11, before the 7-second strat was later discovered. Thought I should be a good sport and probably add that in. Up next, I think I got a pretty interesting idea for what to examine for a video. Hope to see you then. Check out my Ebony and Ivory critique. It's good. It's good.